An Explanation for the World. November 25, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. We have to deal with the corporations because that is how the Pope and the Queen decided to structure their business operations in this country back in the 1860s to 70s. The Queen and the Pope and the Lord Mayor are our subcontractors. They set up the corporations as their subcontractors. And their corporations then hired subcontractors of their own, all the departments and agencies and their subcontractors, too. That means that when they, the Queen, the Pope, and the Lord Mayor all bankrupt their subcontracting corporations and cause all this turmoil, we have to sort through their mess and deal with their corporate personnel. There are two giant governmental services corporations involved. The United States, Inc. and the United States of America, Inc. The United States, Inc. has been liquidated in involuntary bankruptcy, with the result that there is no longer an office of President of the United States. They have tried to reboot a new municipal corporation to replace the United States, Inc. and act as a successor to the contract established by the Constitution of the United States, but we have declined the option to accept that successor to contract. If the Pope wants to continue to do business here, there has to be a meeting of the minds and a renegotiation with us. The United States of America unincorporated, the municipal subcontractors have gone wildly astray from their constitutional limitations and duties and have been running roughshod over their employers. That has to end, and all the municipal corporations that have been created and allowed to operate unlawfully have to be restructured and redirected. Biden is a money launderer and racketeer on a very large scale, and he never keeps his word about anything. It's impossible to work with someone like that, because they are constantly changing tracks, altering plans, and seeking some advantage for themselves or their cronies instead of attending to the actual business at hand. He may or may not have been elected to the office of President of the United States, but that is a moot point, because as I pointed out, the office no longer exists because the United States, Inc. no longer exists, and there is equally no point in trying to front some new municipal corporation to act as successor and try to say that Biden is president of that new would-be successor organization, because that successor doesn't have a contract with us and we are not assuming any contract with it. This is just business. Imagine that you have a contract with XYZ Snow Removal Company, Inc. and they go bankrupt. When they go bankrupt, another corporation that owns XYZ's debts, call it Big Snow Removal, Inc., comes in and takes over the materials and equipment and personnel of XYZ, and shows up at your door and starts shoveling. At that point, you have the right to say, "Hey, who are you? I don't have a contract with Big Snow Removal, Inc. and I am not assuming a successor contract." That's what we just did. We very clearly stood in our proper capacity as the United States of America and said, "Hey, we don't have a contract with this new successor organization and we aren't assuming any contract with it. There has to be a renegotiation with us to continue. The municipal corporations can't just roll it over and keep on skating." We particularly object to all attempts by all parties to inject anyone with patented mRNA and thereby claim that they have created a new GMO product, subject to their claims of ownership. We will liquidate any corporation caught in any such scheme, jail their board of directors, and hold their corporation officers accountable, too. We are going to stop now and review the way this whole operation has been running and who is running it. We have a right to pull the other principals, the Pope, in this case, back to the table, and force the discussion, just as you would have the right to contact Big Snow Removal, Inc. and decide whether or not you wanted to contract with them for snow removal services, or find some other vendor to replace XYZ Snow Removal Company, Inc. Meanwhile, the United States of America, Inc., is in Chapter 11 reorganization, and we are their primary creditors. We, not the bankruptcy trustees, hold the key to their fate. Accordingly, we, their priority creditors, have directed the bankruptcy trustees to set aside enough of the debt of the United States of America to pull it out of bankruptcy and enable Mr. Trump to resume command as the President of the United States of America, obligated to operate under the Constitution of the United States of America. We did this to maintain defensive capability and to provide a familiar service interface for the American people while we sort this mess out. Again, this is just business. We can't have both subcontractors up for grabs at the same time, and while we are very disappointed with Lord Mark Malloch Brown and the puerile vote tampering he and his cohorts at MI6 and in the CIA have engaged in, we are confident that we can work with the Trump administration to make the necessary changes in policy and administration, including liquidation of the offending agencies, retasking various other subcontractors like the Internal Revenue Service, and thereby accomplishing a long overdue house cleaning of the territorial government and its functions, too. As I observed, Mr. Trump did declare war, commercial war, and within the structure of the territorial government, it takes 3 army officers to form a tribunal competent to jail or execute traitors to this country. We are not as short of judicial capability as it might at first appear. And our army is capable of operating as a voluntary force, in the event of any foot dragging on the part of the trustees. The League of Nations and the United Nations organizations are both called upon to put an end to the madness that has been caused by misadministration of these various governmental services corporations, including the UN Corp, which has been among the most corrupt offenders. George Soros has been a particular nuisance. We are well aware of the Vichy French origins of the UN Corp and disapprove of its unlawful operations around the world and the dishonest and irresponsible activities of its members and officers seeking to set up a phony, communist threat in order to justify its own ambitions, advancing a fascist form of corporate feudalism to overtake free society in the Western world. It is blindingly apparent that British corporations and European banks have been using China as a means of money laundering and extortion and kickbacks to politicians like Biden and Gavin Newsom. It is also apparent that the so-called U.S. trade deficit, with China as a chimera caused by money laundering and embezzlement on both ends of the commodity pipeline involved, supplemented and greased by counterfeiting operations master-minded by British and Canadian ops set up in British Columbia. We are not amused. All the corporation bosses worldwide need to take note that the actual government of this country is now in session. The actual governments of all your countries will be in session soon. It is time to get back in your boxes, shut down these criminal usurpations against your employers, and straighten up the money mess, including the counterfeiting of Federal Reserve notes and the MERS beast mortgage system. Mr. Trump may not be the poster boy everyone wants, but at least he does keep his word.